Do-it-yourself spirituality. Sacrificing chickens, bring out the snakes.
To make a long story short,
went into professor mode there.
Your next favorite podcast pick starts now. Here's the Professor and Heather Ann.
Welcome to the Professor and Heather Ann. Although we do not have all the answers, we hope we can encourage and excite you. We're here sharing our lives to inspire you to make the most of the second half of your life. So today, we are diving into religion.
yes, as we are approaching Hanukkah, so we thought we would discuss our faith journeys.
And how important faith, religion has been in our marriage, how important it is that God's in the middle of our marriage. We thought this was a perfect opportunity with, Hanukkah right around the corner, then we have Christmas, so this just seemed like a perfect opportunity to talk about religion, talk about our faith. We are Jewish. You were raised Jewish.
I was raised Jewish and fell away from it, from both the faith and the community life for decades. Whereas you were not raised Jewish. You discovered Judaism as part of a spiritual quest.
Yes, when I was actually very young. I did not grow up in a home with religion. God was never discussed in our home. We never prayed. I got my love of God and understanding God from my grandmother on my mom's side. She was somebody that was very important to me in my childhood. When things were really bad, we would be dropped off at her house. We could be there for a few days. We could be there for a week or so. And whenever we were there on a Sunday, it was expected that we would go to church with her. It was a very scary church to go to. My grandmother, I grew up going to church with my grandmother until she passed away. And maybe probably even a little bit before that when she became ill, before she passed away. She went to the Sunshine Church in Bakersfield. And it was a Pentecostal speaking in tongues, chickens, all kinds of...
Sacrificing chickens, bring out the snakes. And when I was about 5 years old, I had asked her, why do you go to this scary church? And number one, the one reason why she went to that scary church is because my grandmother was a very faithful woman. She did not drive, and that was the closest church to her. So she would walk every Sunday to church and walk back. She only lived a couple of blocks away. But on one of our conversations on the way home, it was like, why are you going to this scary church, Grandma? And she just told me that God didn't care where you worshipped him, just as long as you worshipped him. And I think that stayed with me in fact, I know that has stayed with me my whole entire life. I knew I was searching because of the things that were happening to me in my home. Even at a young age, at 5 years old, I knew my dad was choosing to do those things to us. I knew that God had nothing to do with it. I knew that it wasn't his fault. I've never blamed God. I've always been hopeful. I always knew I would have a better life than the life I had when I was a child. But that also set me on a quest. And I would literally, especially after my grandmother passed away and I could no longer go to church with her, I would literally go to church with whoever would take me. And that means Sunday school, that means vacation Bible school. For 3 years, I went to church with my gymnastics coach. I would stay the night at her house and go to church on Sunday. She would bring me home after church. Why my parents allowed that to happen, I have no idea. It was a different era.
I don't think that could happen now.
I know for a fact that cannot happen now. I would have never let that happen with my boys. But so God was never talked about, but there was weird.
So what kind of things were your parents into?
My dad was into Scientology.
Uh-huh.
My mother was into tarot cards, going to the psychic, burning the right candles, having the right incense.
Okay. So do-it-yourself spirituality.
Do-it-yourself spirituality. But one of the things my parents definitely, I'm very thankful for to this day, is that they allowed me to just go wherever. And you name it, I went to it. But I think part of my journey not understanding as a small child was I was looking to wash away my family's sins.
Mm-hmm.
Because I figured I didn't think that I was doing bad things. So it was the bad things my parents were doing that if I just kept going to church, kept having conversation with God, kept getting baptized. I probably was baptized 8 to 10 times as a child because I saw it as a way of, again, just washing away my family's sins.
So in retrospect, you can see you didn't really understand the theological significance of baptism. Well, I guess people didn't explain it to you properly.
I don't think it was really explained to me properly because one of the stories I shared with you, because I have some weird stories, was when I was about 9 or 10, I went to a Lutheran church, a summer camp. And went with a friend. And one of the things they talked about, so we were there for 2 weeks, one of the things that they talked about when you were there was that you had the opportunity to get baptized. Of course, I signed up for it. But they put on little ropes for you, and they had like a little lake, and I really just felt like I needed to be a part of this. And a couple of days before they were having the event, they informed me that I needed to have parental consent. Well, I knew that was not going to happen because my mother, as long as I didn't bring it home, it's like whatever I did outside, as long as I wasn't coming home talking about God, asking questions about Jesus or anything like that, she was okay with it. But if it was brought, if I had to ask for something like, I want to get baptized or I want to do this, her answer was always no. Mm-hmm. And so I knew that wasn't going to happen, but I had to call my mom and pretend that I was getting permission from her. And
how did you do this?
I dialed time. You used to be able to call time back then. You'd call a number and go beep, 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 beep. The time is. So I sit there, again, I'm 9 or 10 years old, and I'm having a conversation. Great, Mom, I really want to do this. I will let them know that I can do this. And I'm in their office at the camp. Great, okay. My mom said I could do it, put me down, I'm going to do this. They called me in the next day. Apparently they needed to speak to my mother. And so they called her directly. And my mother was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And the answer was not just no, it was hell no. And they came and got me and said, you can't do this because of we need your mom's permission, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, you spoke to her. Don't you think I need this? So I was trying to convince them that I needed to do this. So when the time came, I felt this truly just deep in my soul. And again, I know I was searching for something that I just was not getting at home. So I went around to like the other side. And they would say the prayer, the blessing, or whatever.
The other side of the lake.
Other side of the lake. They would say the prayer, the blessing, or whatever. And then when they would do that, I would dunk myself in the water. And
self-baptism.
Yes, self-baptism. I got in trouble.
Yeah.
When we were packing up and leaving, one of the youth pastors actually came up to me and told me, it's probably a good idea you don't come back next summer. And I was like, you wouldn't save me. Why would I come back to a place you wouldn't save me? But I think the whole purpose of that story
And why that stays with me is I just knew I was searching for something. Not having it in my home, not having my grandmother around anymore. So I was searching for something. Even when I got into high school, I started doing more research. Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism, all of the isms. Because I knew God was in my life.
But you didn't know exactly how.
I just didn't exactly know how. And I knew that I wanted that to be a major part of my life, but again, I still didn't know how because I didn't have any direction on how to make that happen. So all through high school, I was just searching. And then when it came to Judaism, I just felt like that's where I belonged. I never planned on having children. That wasn't something that was in my wheelhouse. But I knew just in case if I did, I wanted God to be
in their lives. This is a very common thing that people who convert to Judaism say is often it can't, like, it's hard to explain it in words. It's just like, this felt right, or this felt like home, or this felt like me in discovering it. So Judaism is not just a religion; it's a tribe or a people. So the Hebrew phrase "Am Yisrael," the people of Israel, and so there's something about joining it that's not really quite the same as converting to most religions. And so, like, how did you, as you got more and more acquainted with Judaism and more taken with the idea of converting, like how did that feel, the joining a tribe?
I felt like it truly was the path that I was on. I happened to be dating a guy who was Jewish. He was born in Iran, grew up in Israel. His family moved to the United States. And every Friday night they had Shabbat dinner. It was expected that you had to go, grandkids, all the kids. It was either at his parents' house or one of his siblings. I really liked that. I think part of learning how it was a tribe and everything, that was my first experience because I didn't have that growing up. I just felt like this is a place where I belong. So I went to the rabbi that was suggested to me. I went to the yeshiva to see about converting, what that would take. And one of the things about Judaism is that they turn you away.
So it is not, and hasn't been for, well, really since the destruction of the Second Temple, so that's the year 70. It has not been a proselytizing religion, so it permits conversion, but it doesn't go out looking for converts. And in fact, it's a tradition that when someone asks to convert, a rabbi is supposed to turn them away. And then if they come back, turn them away again. They have to come 3 times and confirm that, yes, this is what I really want to do before a rabbi will even start the conversion process.
And that's what happened. And growing up, I asked a lot of questions. And so I would drive my Sunday school teachers crazy, vacation Bible school instructors, all these people. I would, no joke, there is times that they would sometimes just be like, does anybody have any questions other than Heather? Because I asked a lot of questions. And this did not change when I was converting to Judaism. I asked the rabbi a lot of questions too. And there would be multiple times he would roll his eyes at me as well. Because I just had so many questions. I just had questions about God. I just had questions. And I think that really just came from how I grew up.
Being what? Skeptical.
I don't know if it was necessarily skeptical. I really truly believe, I know by the age of 5, there was times when we were locked in our rooms that I truly would have conversations with God, and just like, I know this is not you. I know these are choices he's making.
And so you converted with an Orthodox rabbi, right?
Yes, it was important to me from the things that I've learned, that when I go to Israel, I want to be recognized. If I decided to have children, I wanted them to be recognized. So it was very important to me to convert Orthodox, which is a whole different thing.
So for those for those who are unfamiliar, there's basically three branches of Judaism in America. There's similar things in other countries, but in the United States, there's three branches: Orthodox, Conservative, and Reform. Orthodox is the most strict. Reform is the least strict. So Reform, they don't even keep kosher most of the time, and a lot of the prayers are in English. And then Conservative is in between. But the state of Israel gives the right to return to all Jews, but for converts, you have to have converted Orthodox.
Correct. So it was important to me that I did that, and there was times the rabbi and I did not see eye to eye on several things. Like I wanted to learn about the Kabbalah, but I had to go and learn how to keep a kosher home with the rabbi's wife.
So the women converts did not get the same instruction.
No, I only had to learn enough Hebrew to say the prayers, not necessarily speak it fluently or even be able to read it. So this was the late 80s. So I would have conversations with the rabbi that it's the 80s, we should be able to, which drove him crazy, which came from my childhood too. It's not that I was ever trying to
make trouble.
It was, I truly have questions, and you've learned this in our marriage now. I question a lot of things. I'm just not a person to sit there and go, oh, okay. It's like, well, why is it done that way? Why can't I do it this way? Or is there a better way to do it? Just telling me just because does not work for me at all. I want to dive deeper. Mm-hmm. And it's just, for me, it's not to be a smart aleck. It really is. I truly want to understand. I truly do want to be as close to God as I possibly can. And I wanted to raise my children, if I decided to have them at the time when I was converting, to be able to have that in their lives as well.
So this was how you arrived. How you arrived to be Jewish is this largely kind of solo spiritual quest, starting from when you were a young child and culminating in conversion. Well, not culminating, but continuing on with your conversion. So my experience is completely different. So my parents were fairly observant. They kept a kosher home. They didn't keep kosher when they ate outside the home, but that was the line they drew. Different people draw different lines. But our home was kosher. There were separate silverware for the meat and dairy dishes, and so forth. We went to services pretty frequently, and I was bar mitzvahed. I was given all the training to chant a portion from the prophets and give a speech. So in my mid-teens, I started to become disenchanted with the religion. It started to seem to me to be just a way to frighten people into obeying arbitrary rules. So one of the themes at the high holidays, at Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, is that God is recording in a book who's going to survive until next Rosh Hashanah, and then who's going to die by all these various means, who will die by water, by fire, by earthquake, by wild beast. And I remember, so I would have been like 14 or 15, deciding that it was frightening children just to get them to obey. And then a couple years after that, I started reading the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, and so I left behind both religious faith and also identity with my Jewish heritage. And this continued for decades. So really until I was into my 50s.
But one of the things I've learned being in your academic world is a lot of academia people have a tendency to go the other direction. They have a tendency to go away from God.
So I just read this new book by Charles Murray called Taking Religion Seriously. And so he describes, it's autobiographical. He's a very well-known social scientist. He's written about controversial topics like IQ and crime. And but this book, unlike all his other books, is autobiographical and traces his journey from being from losing his faith in college to regaining it gradually through the rest of his life. And one of the things he says is, that it was, the smart people don't believe that stuff anymore. And the way he puts it is, of the tribes I belong to, one of them is the tribe of smart people. And so it's like, it's kind of costing something to say that he's rediscovered faith. So that's what you're referring to.
Yes. Yeah. So we've had this conversation multiple times. About what age were you when you started coming back to God and Judaism?
It was very gradual in my 50s. So after about 2010, and part of it was just a realization that it really wasn't so much about religious faith; it was about identity. And so the academics, again, to generalize here, but academics, it's not just that they, for the most part, don't have religious faith. It's that they reject, on principle, pretty much all of the traditional bases of identity that Westerners have had until fairly recently. So patriotism. Okay, so if you identify as an American or a British or a French, patriotism is derided as being potentially racist, potentially warmongering. Religion is derided. Oh, it's all superstition. And even the identity that people get from their family roles of being a parent, that too is kind of more subtly, it's derided. It's like, you need help from the experts to raise your children. You can't make those decisions yourself. And so as people have jettisoned those sources of identity, I think this is one of the reasons why so many young people, especially, been brought up without these sources of identity, feel so alienated and atomized and like they don't belong to any kind of community. So that was one thing. And so it was rediscovering the need for identity. And the way I saw it is, you got to be who you are. So, the identity that I was raised in was Jewish, and so that's who I was. So that came first, really, was the rediscovering a sense of identity with the tribe. And then the religious faith. So another one of the things that Charles Murray says in this book is that so his wife was, he says, very attuned to spiritual experiences, to feeling the presence of God, and she's been involved in a Quaker church for a long time. And he said, observing her and the other people in the church, he could see that he couldn't experience what they were experiencing, but he could also tell that it was real to them, that it wasn't a kind of delusion or self-deception, that what they were tapping into something real, but just he couldn't tap into it. So he draws the analogy with how people differ in their appreciation of music. Some people are very profound, very emotionally moved by music, and then there are other people. I met one of these people once, and I read about them. There's this book by Oliver Sacks called Musicophilia, and for some people, music is just noise. It has no effect on their emotion, and so what Murray is saying is probably the same is true about being attuned to the spiritual world, and that Charles Murray, and this applies to me also, we just We can't feel it. But there's another way to get to faith, and that is by looking at rational arguments for the existence of a creator. And so, to make a long story short,
went into professor mode there.
For centuries it's been thought that science and religion are a conflict, but today it looks more like scientific findings like point the way toward belief in a creator. So things like the origin of the universe, the Big Bang, and the fact that the universe, the laws of physics and so forth, seem to be very finely tuned to the emergence of life. There's a whole lot of other ways the universe could be organized in which there would be no life or even no stars. Then there's things like what's called terminal lucidity, in which people who are like have advanced dementia, then just for a short time, like a day before they pass away, they're suddenly completely lucid again. They recognize relatives they haven't recognized for years. And there's been no materialist explanation for this. In terms of brain function, it makes no sense. And so this raises the possibility that human consciousness is not always entirely dependent on material processes like what goes on in the brain. So that's, it's thinking about those things that have brought me back to faith. It's not having spiritual experiences as such.
But would you say, since we've been together, because mine has been a spiritual journey, I have had conversations, I feel the spirituality more than you do.
Yeah.
But one of the things that you talk about is you have no idea why you jumped in your car, drove halfway across the country to a place that you didn't know anything about. You knew a few people. Wouldn't you say that that is kind of a spirituality and that you're maybe learning more of those since we've been together?
Yes, that did. At the time, I wouldn't have said it felt like a spiritual experience. It just felt like something that I was doing that I couldn't explain to myself. But it was a complete departure from. Making the decision to come to Oklahoma was a complete departure from how I've made all the other decisions preceding it in my lifetime,
and several of the decisions that we've made since we've been together.
Yes, have felt like they've been
spiritually driven.
Yes, brought to us, fated.
So that was something that was very important to us that was very important to me, that I found somebody who was spiritual and who believed in God, and God was going to be a part of our lives and part of our marriage. I've been fortunate that my boys grew up in the synagogue, local synagogue. They went to Hebrew school. My youngest one was involved in youth group, went to summer camps. He's been a counselor at summer camps. So very involved. And you grew up in the synagogue that your mother still goes to this day.
That's right. My mother still attends the synagogue where I was bar mitzvahed more than 50 years ago.
And one of the things that we did when we decided we were going to move was go check out the synagogues in the Roanoke area, because that was important, that wherever we moved to, that we were still part of the Jewish community.
Yes, and we found two different communities. There's a conservative one, and then there's the Chabad, which is so Chabad is, it's not just Orthodox. It's kind of, there's kind of an emphasis on like mystical experience, dancing and so forth. But there's a whole lot. The Chabad have a whole lot of energy. The Chabad is at a college town, and so they sort of, well, I guess you'd say minister in a way to the Jewish college students. And what we heard about that is that there's just a tremendous amount of energy. Their their building is packed on for the holidays and even for the weekly Shabbat services.
But it was important to us to make sure we liked the community before making our final decision if we were going to move there.
Absolutely.
Because I am leaving a synagogue that I have been participated. My boys grew up. The relationship with the rabbi. We got married in the synagogue. It was very important to us. Neither one of us had a very religious first marriage. So it was very important to us that we had the whole experience. We got married under the chuppah. We broke the glass. We had a reception there, which had to be kosher because they're a kosher synagogue. So that was important to us.
Yes. And right, like my first marriage, we had a kind of a write your own vows. It was almost pagan in some ways, even though it was a minister who performed it, but he just performed what we wrote and talked about the life force instead of about God.
I didn't know that life force. That's interesting. Ours was my ex and I. We got married in Vegas. It was a last minute thing. So there wasn't really
an Elvis impersonator.
It was not an Elvis impersonator, but we got married at the MGM. So when it was brand new at the time. So
it was very important for our wedding that it be a religious service, and the rabbi gave a very nice little, I guess you wouldn't call it a sermon, but a little message that was, because we, of course, we had talked to him before this, and so he knew things. He knew about us and our story, and
we talked about, because again, I ask a lot of questions, but I also like to put my spin on some things. So one of the things with Judaism is you have what they call a ketubah. It's like a document that.
It's a contract.
It's a contract that says we're going to, stay in this marriage. We're going to commit to each other. We're going to commit to God. We're going to have God in our relationship. But at the bottom of it.
So it's in Aramaic.
Yes.
And that part is just set. You can't change that. But then what you can also post on it or print on it as the translation. It doesn't have to be a translation of the actual Aramaic. It can be pretty much whatever you want. And so
we put things like, I promise to sew the holes in your socks. You made a comment of, what did you put in? We each had our own little
joke
that we put in it, and the rabbi actually thought that was cute. Because even though we talk about the heavy stuff, and even here on the podcast, we do try to keep things light. So I wanted to make sure our ketubah really had some of our personality in there.
Exactly. And then the design, the decoration of it is based on something from Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings. Always go back to the Lord of the Rings. No, actually, it was really great, and I love our ketubah. I like how we made it personal. So, do you think that people in general, no matter what religion, since COVID, are going more back to their faith? They're
absolutely
looking for God more?
Absolutely. And I see the quantitative data, the opinion polls, and it's still the case that the younger generation is the least religious generation in American history. But there are signs of a turnaround, and if you just sort of go past the quantitative data and just look at things like attendance at religious services, you can see this, that people are they're hungry for meaning. So modern life, even when it provides us with all the material benefits, right? It provides us with safety and adequate food and housing and shelter, food and housing and clothing and so on and so forth. Even when it provides that, it sort of it tends to strip away the meaning from life, and people need a sense of meaning. And so on the one hand, you have the rise of, well, frankly, occult kinds of activities and do-it-yourself. So I guess you could say that your parents were kind of pioneers in this do-it-yourself spirituality. It's much more common now. But on the other hand, you also see some people turning, I wouldn't say really turning back to traditional religion, because a lot of them were not even raised in it. They're turning to it for the first time.
Seeking God.
Yes. Seeking to feel like they're part of a bigger story. I think in a way, like, that's a more general way to put this, is that people need to feel like their lives have some meaning. And they're a continuation of events that happened in the past, and they're a kind of a prelude to events that are going to happen in the future, that their lives are situated in this bigger story, of which traditional religion is an excellent way of telling a story like that.
And do you think your explanation kind of is your explaining how you came back to God? You were seeking, there was a bigger picture.
Yes. And so the field of study my field of study of evolutionary social science, it seeks to provide explanations for why are people doing the things that they're doing. One of the ways that my worldview changed in my 50s was I would hear these explanations and think, okay, well, it's consistent with the data, and it makes sense from the point of view of evolutionary theory, but the explanations started to sound kind of shallow, kind of incomplete, like, okay, but that can't be the whole story. And so that science can explain a lot about why people do what they do, but there's more that it can't explain.
So we openly talk about God in the house. We're very, on a regular basis, just about every day. Whether when we're waking up or going to bed, we're very grateful for our life. We are very well aware that God brought us together. There is no other explanation of how we met or how our lives even,
Yes. It's a series of impossibly unlikely events that brought us together.
And we talk about that a lot. And I think one of the things that I want to get across to our listeners is we talk about it a lot because it helps keep us centered. I know for me, it helps keep me centered. It helps me, on the tough days, to be very thankful, to know that God has brought me from where I was as a child to even here with you now. So we openly talk about God in the house all the time. I'm open with my children. And even with us making this move, it's important that we're still part of a community where we can go volunteer. Volunteering's a very big thing for me, where we really want to be a part of our community. I've been very fortunate to be a part of the Jewish community here in Tulsa, and a little sad to be leaving it.
Of course. Yes. I've been going to meetings of the Synagogue Men's Club, and at every meeting they tell me, so you're leaving. Why are you leaving us? So the Jewish religion is a very community-oriented religion. There aren't any Jewish hermits. I mean, there have been a few, but they're not spoken of in a complimentary way. It's like that's wrong. You should not be going up on a mountaintop to contemplate God. And so some of the rituals are family rituals, like the Seder, that opens the holiday Passover. That's generally done in the home with family. But most of the rituals are done with the community. And so there's a rule that there needs to be what's called a minyan, which is, well, for the Orthodox, 10 men, for the conservative and reform who've loosen things up a bit to just 10 adults. And that number of people is required to do a lot of the rituals, like to read from the Torah scrolls. So it's very much a religion that is embedded in group or communal practice,
which we are again very involved in the community. Hanukkah is around the corner. You do things in your home, but you do things with the community. High holidays, it's very community oriented. You go to services. There's a particular way that services are set about.
Yeah, and a lot of the roles in the rituals, like taking the Torah scrolls out of the ark and walking them around the congregation, or these roles are assigned at the beginning of the day to particular congregants, and so there's this sense that everyone's involved in this. It's not that you're just sitting there listening to the clergyman, tell you what's up. It's like everyone is involved in it.
We've actually talked about a lot. You have a great foundation from your childhood. I have no foundation, but was searching for that. What's some encouraging words that we could give our listeners about faith and having faith in your home, having faith in your marriage?
So faith will, well, first of all, you can't, for those who are doubting, you can't force yourself to have faith. So faith is something that you come to through effort, and sometimes you feel like you're losing your faith, so it can be a struggle to maintain faith. But faith can provide an anchor for all aspects of your life. As I said, I think a lot of young people are turning to traditional religion because of this crisis of meaning, and so the faith that you hold and that you've embedded it into your personality, it will provide an anchor for your relationships, for your professional or your work life, for
friendships,
for everything.
So, would you say that your life started changing? You were on this journey even before we met each other, when you started going back to your religion, when you started going back to looking at God and looking at your faith. So,
yes, I reached a stage of actually doing something, not just thinking, during the pandemic. And in fact, the first high holiday services that I attended, quote unquote, were on Zoom. It was the UCLA Hillel, that's the student Jewish organization, had their high holiday services, and so this would have been probably 2021, but it might have been 2020. And I remember just sitting in the living room, watching the services on my laptop, and feeling, this was, it was connecting me with something that I hadn't experienced since I was a child, and it was very emotionally powerful. So yes, this was before we met. And
what would you say is one of the biggest misconceptions about Judaism? Unfortunately, the last couple of years, we've seen a rise in anti-Semitism, and we are very fortunate that we have a lot of friends that are around us and ask us questions. They come participate. They come have dinner with Shabbat dinner. That is something that is grounded in our marriage, is that we try to have Shabbat dinner at home. We invite guests to come.
Yes, we do. I bake challah.
You bake challah, which is very good.
Thank you.
And you bake and you do the dinner, and it's a big thing.
Blessings.
We say the blessings and everything. That's what helps keep us grounded, and we try to do Friday nights. We either have guests come over or we stay home ourselves. But what is one of the misconceptions that you think is out there about Judaism, especially these last few years?
Okay. Just one. So
there's a lot. Unfortunately, there are a lot, but what's one of the biggest ones
that has a long history in Christianity is the idea that Christianity is about love, whereas Judaism is about just following the rules. Okay, and so you can actually see this theme worked out in Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice, where the Jewish villain. Because sign this contract that if this guy doesn't pay up, then Shylock will take a pound of flesh. It's in the contract, and then whereas the Christian characters are all about love and forgiveness. So that's a misconception. In fact, rather than being about blindly following the rules, actually Jews love to argue about the rules, about which ones are applicable, and and love and forgiveness are in fact a central theme in the Jewish religion,
which is Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. During those times, the period of time between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, you are supposed to go to the people that you did the wrong things to and ask for their forgiveness. Nice. So it is about forgiveness and love and everything, but that's one of the main things that I really like about Judaism is you're going to the people that you wronged that year and asking forgiveness. Then you go in on Yom Kippur, I'm going to be a better person, I'm going to do better this next year. So it is about love and community and forgiveness and
It's a religion there's a very strong practical component. A lot of it is about like how to live in this world and treat other people well.
So, as we're wrapping up, there's two things that I want to recommend. So, two of the shows that I think people should watch. One of them is
Nobody Wants This.
Nobody Wants This. That's right. So we want to recommend, watch that. It's on Netflix. We love it. It really has a lot of great explanation and everything. And we have really been enjoying watching The Chosen.
So we, neither of us, even though you went to all those Bible camps, but somehow
there's still a lot of stories I don't know.
Neither of us knew very much about the New Testament, and watching this series, I'm not sure quite exactly how closely it adheres to the text, but we've learned a lot.
We've learned a lot, but I think there's also a lot to be learned about Jews and about the Jewish people in that.
That's right.
Series as well. So we definitely do recommend those two. I guess that's the first time we're recommending something, but I recommend that. So we hope you enjoyed this episode where we really talked about faith, how God is part of our is inside our marriage, the aspects of how faith shapes our lives, the traditions, some of the misconceptions. We have so many exciting discussions coming up, including guests, and can't wait to have you along for new episodes.
And if you enjoy our podcast, and we hope you do, please subscribe and please rate us and write a review on wherever platform where you get your podcasts. So join us here each week, my friend. You're sure to get a smile. From lessons learned to mishaps, the adventures go on for miles. Here on
The Professor and Heather Ann.
Thank you for listening to The Professor and Heather Ann.